So welcome everybody to today's Sunday program. Do a little rejoicing. So maybe we would talk a little bit about gratitude and about Mudita and a little bit about our senior monks that were here. And so I thought maybe we'd start with, so he actually, as you know, he originally ordained in Sri Lanka, but he's been practicing in the Thai forest tradition for more than 20 years. And then he established this monastery starting, I've forgotten the year, 2005 or 2006. And you can see that throughout that time, then he's worked very hard to bring different teachers to you here. And you can see the pictures in the past of Lungpor Piak was here and Lungpor Plian. And quite a few, I think Ajahn Chatamalo, I don't know all of the different Ajahns that he's brought in seclusion. Now, especially in Western countries, it's very difficult to find that opportunity. Even in monasteries, right? Because sometimes the monastery is near a busy road, or sometimes it's not near a busy road, but the monastery has like some kind of loudspeakers inside or something. So here you have a simple setup, but also notice how all the kutis have adequate facilities. So it's simple, but it's not forcing you to endure something that you can't endure. So we have to appreciate the foresight that went into making this place and all the hard work. Ajahn Dhammasya also was, when I was a lay person, I came here and I had some plans to ordain, but it took some mentoring, you could say, before I could find a suitable place. So Ajahn helped me with that. He also got me started learning Pali. So I'm very grateful for all of these contributions that he made towards my monk life. And he helped me to find a suitable place in Sri Lanka where I ended up going. Although it wasn't the only place he recommended, he also recommended some monasteries in Thailand. And usually in Sri Lanka, if you have teachers like this who you knew before you ordained, often you'll go after every vasa to visit. So maybe I haven't done that too much, but I've definitely visited a few times to pay respects to Ajahn. And so we're doing this practice of, I was actually thinking to read Lungpor Liam's little booklet about Katanyu Katavedi, about gratitude and repaying the debt of gratitude. But I thought maybe we won't really have enough time to do that and to discuss the 4 different ajahns we wanted to talk about today. So, but just to understand that we have these two aspects that we're supposed to develop. So you can see one of the qualities in the Mahamangala Sutta, the great auspices, the great blessings in our lives, is this sense of feeling a sense of gratitude, katanyuta. And so one of the ways that we develop it is actually by, or maybe I've given away the game. So we develop it by actively promoting it in our lives and in our minds. And this is something that we don't do that much in Western countries. I guess I can't speak for Australia, but certainly in North America, whereas you can see in traditional Asian cultures, it's a very important thing, right? And then you see, I remember when I was visiting Indonesia, and then I was there for Chinese New Year period, and they said, Bhante, we want to invite the monks out to for a trip one day during Chinese New Year. But the first day of New Year, we have to go visit our grandparents, right? You have to go visit all of your grandparents. So they actively cultivate this aspect of gratitude towards their elders. Now, just by recalling them is one thing, but then we want to actually act on that, right? So then when the time comes and to help out the people who've helped you, then you should actually talk about today is actually Ajahn Thanissaro, because we're going to talk about his teachers. So Ajahn Dhammasaya has worked hard to bring Ajahn Thanissaro here so you could hear his teachings. Ajahn Thanissaro himself had ordained in Thailand under a teacher named Ajahn Fuang. And I think most of you know something about what his teachers taught. So Ajahn Thanissaro was he had a very active mind as a young monk. And so Ajahn Fuang told him to sort of put your ideas in a drawer and lock it, and then you can do your meditation, then something like that. But at some point, I think he was encouraged actually to do these translations and to cultivate his Pali studies, and so he practiced with Ajahn Fuang for a number of years, and Ajahn Fuang became sick. And so for the last, I believe he said it was 6 years of his life, then he took the chance to repay the debt of gratitude to his teacher, and he was the upatak, or the attendant monk for him. And so I think that was a very big influence on Ajahn Thanissaro, sort of having that experience of being very close with his teacher. Not I think, he expressed this to us, that this had been a big influence for him. And later he got the chance to come to America with Ajahn Suwat, another extraordinary teacher from the Thai tradition. And he eventually became abbot of Wat Metta in Southern California, not too far from San Diego. And so if you ever get a chance to go there, it's quite a beautiful place. And he also has done his best to develop a monastery with simple facilities but adequate facilities, where they have also in a place with a suitable climate. And I've forgotten the exact number, but it seems right now he has about 16 monks with him. Maybe he is ordained in his lifetime as a preceptor. Maybe he has had about 30 monks. So all of that, those monks, all of that merit has come through him, as well as all of the teachings that he's given. So we have dozens of books, even in the Dhammagiri library by Ajahn Thanissaro. I'm sure many of you are familiar with his teachings. You can say he's one of the most influential of the Western Dhamma teachers. Now, his teacher was Ajahn Fuang. So let's have a look. I thought I'd bring down this book of quotes from Ajahn Fuang. Now, some of his quotes can be a bit tough on his students there, but we'll just read a couple of quotes. You can get a flavor of his teachings. It's his awareness itself. When Ajahn Fuang taught meditation, he didn't like to map things out in advance. As soon as he had explained the beginning steps, he'd have the students start sitting right in his presence, and then take the steps back home to work on there. If anything came up in the course of the practice, he'd explain how to deal with it, and then go on to the next step. Once a layman, who had known more than his share of meditation teachers, came to discuss the Dhamma with Ajahn Fuang, asking him many questions of an advanced nature as a way of testing his level of attainment. Ajahn Fuang asked him in return, "Have you had these experiences in your own meditation yet?" "No, not yet." "Then in that case, I'd rather not discuss them, because if we discuss them when they're not yet a reality for you, they'll just be theories and not the real Dhamma." So most of these teachings that he gave were very pithy, and sometimes, as I said, sharp. It seems that Ajahn Fuang was very much into practical things, not too much into theory. And so he originally was mostly focusing on teaching meditation, But I guess he found that certain people weren't able to meditate or not willing to meditate. And so he also started to do some kind of a building project. So the story is they started to build a chaitya at the monastery. And he said one of the reasons was to sort of engage the part of the community who wouldn't normally come to the monastery. One meditator noticed that his practice under Ajahn Fuang was making quick progress, so he asked what the next step would be. "I'm not going to tell you," Ajahn Fuang said. "Otherwise you'll become this sort of amazing marvel who knows everything before he meets with it and masters everything before he tries his hand. Just keep practicing and you'll find out on your own." You can't plan the way your practice is going to go. The mind has its own steps and stages, and you have to let the practice follow in line with them. That's the only way you'll get genuine results. Otherwise, you'll turn into a half-baked arahant. So I don't actually speak Thai, so I wouldn't really know the puns, but I gather most of these ajahns have a lot of humor in the language. And so modern English isn't sort of that effective for these hidden meanings. If you go back to Elizabethan times, if you read, or even as far back as like Jonathan Swift or somebody, that sort of English, they have a lot of these sort of puns and hidden meanings. So somehow it's been elided from our vocabulary. But so sometimes you read something in English, it sounds like a bit weird, or it sounds really harsh, but in Thai maybe it's funny. So you have to maybe check with somebody who knows when you're reading these things. So I don't know too much about the life of Ajahn Fuang, except that he was the teacher of Ajahn Thanisaro, but his teacher was Ajahn Lee. And so Ajahn Lee was quite a prolific teacher. And it seems he was one of the first teachers in the Thai forest tradition to publish books and to teach in a more systematic way. So they say that Luang Por Sao wouldn't really teach much at all. He just sort of wandered with his monks and sort of sat with them, and we'd say things like, "Go to the forest and make your mind quiet," or whatever. Just very sort of simple instructions. And so Ajahn Lee was quite different. And you can see from his writings that he was extremely intelligent. And he drew from quite a broad variety of Dhamma sources. So you can see that some of his talks are based on ideas from the Visuddhimagga, and some of them are based on like different kinds of, from all kinds of different places. I'm just going to read a passage from his autobiography, because he died quite young. I think he wasn't quite 60. And this is one passage that was very interesting. We actually asked Ajahn about it. I actually asked Ajahn about it the other day. And so at that time there was a lot of persecution in the Sangha, the Thai Forest Sangha, and Luang Por Lee he got the chance to have contact with a monk who was high up in the ecclesiastical ranks in Bangkok, Somdat Mahavirawang, and he got a chance to teach him. And this is one of the turning points where the Thai forest tradition went from being like the pariah tradition to the pride of Thailand. So I'll just read a few paragraphs here. After the rains, I returned to Mae Rim and then went down to the city of Chiang Mai. The only symptom remaining from my illness was an irregular heartbeat. The lay people who had been most concerned about my condition and had from time to time sent supplies from Chiang Mai to where I was staying in the forest, Kun Nai Chusri in Mae Khao Run, brought me spice medicine for my dizzy spells. After staying in Chiang Mai at once Santidang for a while, I went down to stay at Prasabai Cave in Lampang, where a student of mine had spent the rains. While there, I began to have the feeling I would have to return to Bangkok. The Somdet, so Somdet is something like a cardinal, it's a very high rank. The Somdet was seriously ill, and I'd have to stay with him. But there was something inside me that didn't want to go. One night I vowed to have an answer to the question of whether or not I should go to Bangkok. I sat in meditation until dawn. At about 4 a.m., I felt as if my head had been cut off, but my heart was bright and not afraid. After that, my illness was virtually all gone. I returned to Bangkok and stayed at Wat Borom Nivasa. At the time, the Somdet was very ill and gave me an order. You'll have to stay with me until I die. As long as I'm still alive, I don't want you to leave. I don't care whether or not you come to look after me, I just want to know that you're around. So I promised to stay. Sometimes I wonder about what karma I had done that had me cooped up like this. But then I'd remember about the caged dove I dreamed about in Chantaburi. That being the case, I'd have to stay. Once I had made up my mind to stay, the Somdet asked me to come and teach him meditation every day. I had him practice anapanasati, keeping the breath in mind. We talked about a number of things while he sat in meditation. One day he said, I never dreamed that sitting in samadhi would be so beneficial. But there's one thing that has me bothered. To make the mind still and bring it down to its basic resting level, isn't this the essence of becoming and birth? That's what samadhi is, I told him, becoming and birth. But the Dhamma we're taught to practice is for the sake of doing away with becoming and birth. So what are we doing giving rise to more becoming and birth? If you don't want the mind to take on becoming, it won't give rise to knowledge, because knowledge has to come from becoming if it's going to do away with becoming. This is becoming on a small scale, upatita bhava, which lasts for a single mental moment. The same holds true with birth. To make the mind still so that samadhi arises for a long mental moment is birth. Say we sit in concentration for a long time until the mind gives rise to the 5 factors of jhana, that's birth. If you don't do this with your mind, it won't give rise to any knowledge of its own. And when knowledge can't arise, how will you be able to let go of unawareness? It'd be very hard. As I see it, I went on, most students of the Dhamma really misconstrue things. Whatever comes springing up, they try to cut it down and wipe it out. To me, this seems wrong. It's like people who eat eggs. Some people don't know what a chicken is like. This is unawareness. As soon as they get hold of an egg, they crack it open and eat it. But say they know how to incubate eggs. They get 10 eggs, eat 5 of them, and incubate the rest. While the eggs are incubating, that's becoming. When the baby chicks come out of their shells, that's birth. If all 5 chicks survive, then as the years pass, it seems to me that the person who once had to buy eggs will start benefiting from his chickens. He'll have eggs to eat without having to pay for them. And if he has more than he can eat, then he can set himself up in business, selling them. In the end, he'll be able to release himself from poverty. So it is with practicing samadhi. If you're going to release yourself from becoming, you first have to go live in becoming. If you're going to release yourself from birth, you'll have to know all about your own birth. So he went over the Somdet with his chicken simile. I think they know more about agriculture in those days than we do now. So those were some of the qualities of Ajahn Lee. He liked to do these long sittings, these all-night sittings, and he really liked to use these similes about curries and about chickens and things like that. So depending on which country you're from, maybe you can't really relate to, but as I said, because of him, he was able to win over this teacher, this Somdet, and the Somdet was able to learn meditation quite well, which is an amazing thing in itself, given his advanced age and his proximity to death. And So through that channel, the official channel, and also through his students, because he had left these teachings and he had left these students, such as Ajahn Fuang, then he has become one of the most, you can say, through his students, he's become one of the most influential teachers in the West. Now, I started off by saying we're going to be talking about this, about gratitude. Connected with this, so we're trying to cultivate this feeling of gratitude towards our teachers, but connected with this, we have some other meditation objects we can develop. And so one of the objects is this mudita, right? Mudita, this sympathetic joy. And then the other object we can develop is sanghanusati, recollection of the sangha. So when we talk about this mudita or sympathetic joy, it comes together in the 4 Brahmaviharas. And maybe we won't go through them in too much detail, but metta is the wish for someone else to be happy, right? And karuna is the wish for another person to be free of suffering. Mudita is the feeling of happiness at another person's success. So, and again, this is another one. It seems to be weaker in some cultures and stronger in some cultures. So, it's kind of a strange thing to be happy at somebody else's failure, but it's a common experience people have, especially at certain ages, right? So maybe you're a high school athlete, right? Maybe you're playing cricket, and then one of the other players, he breaks his ankle, and they're like, "Yes, I get to play tomorrow," kind of thing. So some people have this kind of a feeling. And so when we practice mudita, it's the exact opposite, right? So if somebody breaks their ankle, we want to develop karuna, so sympathy, so the wish that they be able to recover quickly and that it won't damage their future cricket career. If we want to develop mudita, we look at somebody who's very successful. In fact, they don't have to be very successful. It can be the small successes sometimes, right? So, sometimes maybe your friend gets a nice bouquet of flowers from her children one afternoon, and it's an unexpected gift. So your friend is happy, so you shouldn't be unhappy, right? We try to cultivate happiness, the happiness at our friend's good fortune. If we look at the opposite, we start to cultivate, what about my children? They didn't give me any flowers, and then we become upset, right? So we try to look at something, any kind of good fortune that another person has, and cultivate this sense of happiness. And so when we're developing this practice of recollecting teachers, or like what we're doing today, I think it's possible to develop, to some extent we can develop some kind of mudita for the teachers, right? So that they've had the success in their meditation practice, and they've had the success in spreading the Dhamma and studying the Dhamma. So we can develop that to some extent. And maybe you don't take this as your major meditation object, but one simple way you can incorporate it in your meditation, because sometimes when we meditate, we'll include, for example, the guardian meditations. If you're practicing anapanasati meditation, maybe you'll practice marananusati, recollection of death, or metta. So if you incorporate some of these other objects at the start or the end of your meditation, what you can do is think about somebody who's done something well, who's had some good fortune in life, And you just think to yourself, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Try to cultivate that feeling. It's important to make this a bit of a habit. It depends on your character as well as your culture. So for some people it comes naturally. So the other object is this Sanghanusati. So Sanghanusati is the recollection, technically the recollection of the noble Sangha, but because we don't have the ability to tell who is a member of the noble Sangha, then we can take these great teachers and we can recall their good qualities as well. And so you can practice ujjipatipanno, practice the upright way, all of these different qualities of the Sangha. I think maybe that we can discuss a different day, but for this, what we're just talking about today, just recollecting the lives of past teachers, or recollecting the lives of the great arahants of old from the suttas, you can just recall the word Sangho in your mind. So you can close your eyes, you can meditate, and you can think of an image of whomever you're contemplating. You can have an image of Ajahn Lee, or if it's an arahant of old, maybe a statue of Venerable Sariputta, and you can just contemplate this word Sangho, Sangho, because this is our refuge, right? We have threefold refuge. Threefold or fourfold? Threefold, right? Three. So, Buddha Dhamma Sangha. So, yeah, so those are just some Thank you. So just for those who couldn't hear, so we have a reflection on gratitude from the Chinese tradition, from the Confucian tradition, and they say that if you drink a glass of water, you should never forget that it's come from a well, and you need to think of all of these factors that have gone into yourself getting a cup of the water, and ancestors, as a debt of gratitude. So thank you for this comment. Yeah, it's a very good reflection. I think that if we don't... No one is a self-made woman or a self-made man. So going to pay respects to the ancestors, that's why when somebody else is successful. So we have to cultivate these qualities of contentment together with this quality of mudita. It's a good reflection how all of these things come together. Okay, so we have another reflection coming from. It sounds like it's coming through Ajahn Masiha. So hopefully we're not putting words in his mouth. So this actually is more talking about anumodana rather than mudita. And when somebody is happy, it has some success, then we rejoice in their success, especially if they've made merit. Then we also get a portion of that, right? That we're also making good karma connected with that. And so it's like leverage in financial terms. So for example, if you're buying commodities, then you only need to put, 5%? I don't remember the percentage. But you can invest for 100%, you only need to put down 5%, so you get 20 times the result. But when you're rejoicing in somebody else's merit, when they do something good, then you don't have like the risk of covering a short call or something like that. Covering a margin call, you don't have such things. So we have a financial simile. So thank you for that reflection. For those of you who are doing your merit calculus courses. Mm-hmm.
The interconnectedness of the humanity, and then against that, the relatively small number who have managed to work out their liberation, that makes it very special.
So, is it a reflection, or you're asking how to bridge this concept into your daily life?
So this kind of bridging would be that brings home for me, say, the fraternity of humanity, and sometimes I find it helpful to have that kind of bridging, to make clear the dimensions.
Okay. Yeah, so if it's having that effect, we won't repeat the whole question here, but so when you're doing these reflections about ancestors and dependence and debts of gratitude, if you think of it sometimes we have to think of these things as a bit of a black box, so we know we're more looking at the output than what's sort of going on in the middle, right? So whatever kind of thinking that's giving rise to these wholesome thoughts of gratitude or mudita, then
I think that's why the four Brahmaviharas are immeasurable, and we sort of start with what's close to us, and we go further. That's how it works. I just felt that's how it should be, isn't it?
okay, sadhu. So, were there any other things it's still a little early, we could...
Ajahn was talking about the death of, just now,
Ajahn Surya Panyo's father.
father, and it was the death of my friend. And it sort of caused me to think about death, good death, just something that would take maybe 2 minutes to share with people. There's a story where Ajahn, and just now because Ajahn mentioned Long Pu Sao, and he's very low profile, there's not much writing there about him. But there was a talk by Ajahn Jinaratana where he talked about Long Pu Sao when he was quite old, and he was bitten by, I think it was a wasp or bee or something, and he had a reaction and he knew he was dying. So he was in the northeast Thailand, bordering Laos. So he wanted to go back to his original monastery, and he got his attendant to take him, did the tudong, and then it was a boat trip. So he was on the boat, and then when they were close to arriving, he asked them, and they told him they're close to arriving. So he got up, and he was quite sick, so he was lying down all the time. He got up and he dressed, put on his sampati, and when he arrived at the temple, he walked to the temple and he bowed in front of the Buddha Rupa. And he bowed 3 times, and then he continued to be in that posture. So after a while, his attendant was wondering, maybe he was doing chanting or maybe he was doing some reflection. But then when it got a bit long, so they went to felt his breath, and his breath had come in that in front of the Buddha Rupa. I thought that was a beautiful death.
Okay, sadhu,
Best
sadhu.
death I can think of. And that was a story told by Ajahn Jinaratana.
So we won't repeat these stories, they're too long to hear everybody to hear twice, so... But some reflections, we just had some reflections about the good death of Ajahn Sao and about a good death. We also had a story, Ajahn Thanisra also shared a story about a woman who was helping out at Wat Metta who passed away, and she was quite elderly, and she had decided she wanted to pass away at the monastery. And so one day she was cooking rice. At that monastery, they have one meal at about 9:30 or something, 9 or 9:30. So she was cooking rice, and then she went to the washroom and she just passed away. And then people noticed the rice was burning, and then why is the rice burning? And then they found she had passed away. So yeah, so we all have to go somehow, but if we can go in doing what's meaningful to us, right? It's very important. Okay, maybe we'll break then. I think the group meditation starts at 3, and around 4 or 4:30 there'll be a short Dhamma discussion led by Ajahn Dhammasiha. So we'll just chant the merit gathas very quickly. Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita honta nyatayo. Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita honta nyatayo. Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita honta nyatayo. Etavata chamihi sampadang punya sampadang Sambe devanumodantu samba sampati sindhya Etavata chamihi sampadang punya sampadang Sambe bhutanumodantu samba sampati sindhya Etavata chamihi sampadang punya sampadang Sambe satanumodantu samba sampati sindhya Idang me punyang asavakaya vahang hotu Idang me punyang nibbanasapachiyo hotu Mama punyam bhagang samba satanam bhajemi Te sabbe me samang punya bhagang labantu Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.